So here's the question. How do physical therapists like us, who don't want to see 30 patients a day, who don't want to work home health, and have real student loans, create a career and life for ourselves that we've always dreamed about? This is the question, and this podcast is the answer. My name's Danny Mattei, and welcome to the PTE Entrepreneur Podcast.
What's up, guys? Dr. Danny here with the PTE Entrepreneur Podcast, and I'm coming to you today from beautiful Fayetteville, North Carolina, the home of Fort Bragg, which is the most populated military installation in the U.S. And I'm up here today for the next 2 days. Actually, I'm teaching a mobility WOD tactical course, which is it's kind of this one-day course that we have that goes over solving some of the common tactical problems that we see. A lot of running-related injuries, a lot of movement-based injuries that are just kind of user error, because a lot of these guys don't get any sort of education on how to squat, how to run, how to jump. The kind of basic movement stuff that leads to a lot of long-term injuries. They don't really get a ton of information on that. So we come in and with 30 guys today. We'll have 30 soldiers tomorrow, and we'll go over all kinds of kind of 80-20 principle stuff, right? So we want to teach them the 20% of things they're going to get the 80% of benefit, and things that they can take that are fairly simple back to their units and teach their guys how to do these things. So they can take care of themselves, because the reality is there's almost 1 million non-combat related musculoskeletal injuries a year in the DoD. So that's across the military, all branches. That's a lot, and that costs us a lot of money in tax dollars. That costs us a lot of money in lost time at work for these soldiers, and and disability and things like that whenever they get out. So I'm up here today and tomorrow, and I had a soldier come up to me today after the course, and he goes, "Hey man, I have to do a lot of teaching. I'm a medic, and I teach other medics, and I give briefings." And he said, "Hey, what do you recommend in terms of public speaking, like how to improve that?" So I chatted with him for a little bit, for maybe 5-10 minutes after the course, and we kind of talked about a couple things, because at this point, I've taught over 100 seminars, 100 workshops for mobility WOD. I'm working my way up to probably closer up to 200 range with all the different courses that we've taught. And at this point, it's fairly comfortable for me to be able to stand in front of a big group, and an intimidating group at that. In the military population, it's kind of more an intimidating environment, but it's something that once you've kind of talked about this, whatever information is that you are going over a number of times, it's fairly simple. It's fairly comfortable for you to do that. But when I first got into it, I was super nervous. It was not comfortable at all. And it's taken a long time for me to get to where I feel really comfortable speaking in front of big groups, which is extremely helpful, because it's one of the strongest ways for you to be able to empower other people and leverage your knowledge and really accelerate the changes that you want other people to make, because you can affect just so many people at once, right? So for me, I look at public speaking in a couple different ways. So number one, I think the biggest thing is mindset, right? So what do you do before you teach? What do you do when you get there? Let's say you're teaching a course in a new location. I always show up early. I want to be the first person there. I want to greet everybody as they come in, because this is my spot, right? Like, you're coming into where I'm teaching. If you're there first and I show up late, now all of a sudden I'm coming into where you guys already are. And that one little mindset shift makes a big difference. So I get there early. Nobody's going to beat me there. I'm going to be the first person there. I'm going to welcome everybody in there. They're going to know who's teaching. They're going to know who they're going to have to listen to. And when I start the workshop, whatever it is we're doing, people will be quiet and they're going to listen, because they know who I am, because I've already introduced myself to pretty much everybody. So that mindset is, I'm there first. I'm the person that's in charge, and I take that into it, and that mindset goes with me the whole time. Now, mindset is also, how do you feel about your knowledge level of the material? And this can be kind of hard early on when you're teaching things that you don't really know that well. Like the first few times that I taught for mobility WOD, I didn't really know the information very well. And that's a tough thing to be able to kind of push past that, because I don't think other people realize just the little inefficiencies that you have with the material and things. And lack of confidence with certain things. Like you can hide that pretty well, but you definitely notice it, and it can be distracting to you, and that can cause you to lose focus on what you're talking about for that day. So what I want you to think about is, yes, you may not have that material mastered just yet, right? But you know more than anybody else that's there. And, I had a coach tell me one time, I asked him, I was like, how do you know so much? And he goes, well, I don't have to know that much. I just have to know a little bit more than you to teach you something, right? And I thought that was really funny because it makes total sense. And, when you're teaching at these courses, you don't necessarily have to be this world-renowned researcher in this topic. Now, some people are, and that's great. What you need to know is a little bit more than everybody that's there in front of you. So if you know the most, you're inherently going to be the subject matter expert at that course. So keep that in mind. You don't necessarily have to be the expert, that maybe you think you do need to be. You just need to be better than everybody else in the room. All right. The other thing is practice, right? So I think one of the biggest areas that people just neglect is they don't practice public speaking enough. They don't actually get in front of groups and talk. They don't actually put the time in to work on their craft. And there's things like Toastmasters, which are groups where you can actually go and give presentations and people critique you and they work on improving your public speaking. You can also just go and teach more, like do free teaching at different areas. I used to teach at tons of gyms in Atlanta. Sometimes it was free, sometimes it was paid. But man, you get your reps in and you just start getting better and better and better at that. So I would encourage you to just practice as much as you can, even if you're just practice presenting whatever it is you're going to present to your dog at home. Whatever it is, man, just get your repetitions in. He's not going anywhere. His man's best friend. He'll listen to you no matter how boring it is and how many times you say the same thing over and over again. He'll just stay there and watch you. So practice, practice, practice. The other, little nugget I would tell you is that you want to try to pause more than you think you need to, and especially when you're trying to drive a point home. This is really important. I had a mentor tell me one time, like, you want to pause like Lincoln, and I don't know. Apparently Abraham Lincoln used to do these dramatic pauses whenever he would give speeches, and that's what he was referencing. And his point was, if you pause, it's kind of it catches people off guard, right? And they're kind of thinking, is he going to say something after this? Like, there's this suspense moment that occurs, so as you go through and you're trying to drive a point home, take that extra, second, 2 seconds where you pause and you make direct eye contact with everybody, and then you finish whatever the point is that you have. And that's so powerful. That makes so much of a difference when you actually slow yourself down and you take an opportunity to pause in the right moments, because people remember that and it resonates with them, and it kind of, like I said, it kind of catches them off guard, and they're like, oh man, is he going to finish what he's going to say? And then boom, all of a sudden you say it, and they're, you got them. So you can learn this from, public speakers, presidents, especially, politicians. They will intentionally pause, because what they're trying to do is create suspense, trying to create a change in the way they talk. So pausing is really big. And I would say the last thing, and probably most important thing in my opinion, is the ability to tell stories, and that how that makes you relatable. So anytime that you're presenting, anytime you're in front of people, if you can tell a story that relates to that group somehow, you instantly become more relatable. Like there's some people want to be this authority figure, and they want to just, they don't want anybody to think they know any more than them. They want to be 100%, it's my way or the highway kind of deal. And, I know everything about this. That may be the way that you present. That's not necessarily the way that I do it. The way that I do it is I try to lead with a story. I try to weave stories into my presentation or workshops as much as possible, because people will remember stories. People won't necessarily remember everything you say, but if it's a story that's entertaining and it relates to a point that you're trying to make, they'll remember that, and it's a teaching point that they'll remember. Today I was talking about a couple of my patients that I had seen previously, and they related to some of the topics that we were going over, and I was talking about pain and how pain has multifactorial. There's multiple factors associated with pain, and I told the story. Now, mind you, there's 30 military soldiers in front of me. I told the story about one of the first patients I saw who had broken his back in Afghanistan, and he was running off of a ledge in a firefight, which is basically, people are shooting at each other in the middle of the night, and he runs off this ledge of this building, and he thinks that there's basically like a walkway there, but there wasn't. So he goes off the edge of this ledge, and he falls about 10 feet, and he lands like right on his butt, like smack on his butt. And he jumps up, he runs like a half mile to cover because he's getting shot at, or people are shooting at the whole time. And as soon as he gets to a safe place where he's now like hiding behind something to where he's not in direct fire, instantly his back is killing him, right? It's bad. Like he can't even move, and then he has to be evacuated out of there. So turns out he compressed like 3 vertebrae in his back and had some serious trauma to his back from that fall where he landed on his butt. But from that time when he fell, that time where he ran, half a mile or whatever it was to cover, he didn't have a single bit of pain in his back. I remember him telling me this and him saying, I didn't feel anything in my back when it happened. And as soon as I laid down, like I couldn't move. And I was telling everybody in the room this because we're trying to relate the fact that pain and movement, you can't necessarily gauge the way that you do things, your ability to complete things correctly based on pain, and if you have pain or not, because it's more complex than that. And this story was a perfect story for this group because they've all either had friends or themselves personally been exposed to things just like that. Now, is that the best story to maybe tell in front of a group of accountants at some sort of like corporate event? Maybe not, right? Like you could maybe think of something better that's more applicable. But in this setting, it was perfect. And that story, I guarantee you, is going to have an effect on them when they're like, you know what? They're right. Like I don't feel pain so much when I'm doing X, Y, and Z. And that's the way the body's put together. So it drives that point home. So to summarize, guys, get your mindset right. You want to make sure that you go in and that you own the room and you're the first person there and you welcome everybody and they know who's there, who's presenting, and who they need to pay attention to. Practice what you're doing. Practice in front of your dog. Get your reps in. Practicing with with other groups like Toastmasters or public speaking groups like that. Pause and take your time as you're presenting and as you're laying out your information. Make sure you're pausing at the right times and actually pausing for long enough. Pause until you feel like you're uncomfortable, and then wait a little bit longer and then say something else. All right, and the whole time try to make direct eye contact with everybody. And the last thing is tell stories. They make you relatable and they help drive home points that people are going to remember for a long period of time because it helps resonate the ideas that you're talking about with a story or a framework that they can visualize, and that's a really strong representation of what you want them to remember. So if you do those things, your public speaking is going to be a lot better. You guys are going to get paid a lot more for public speaking. You're going to get more patients from that. You're going to actually build your brand that way, and it's a really, really effective way for you to market yourself and distinguish yourself from the pack of other people out there that are really kind of trying to do the same thing. So thanks so much for listening, guys. It's a PT Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Danny Matei. And if you like this, please share it with your friends, share it with your colleagues. If you really like this, I would 100% appreciate it if you went to iTunes and left me an honest review. It doesn't even have to be words. Maybe you just leave me, a star-based review, and 5 stars would be awesome if you think it's worth it. So if you have a couple extra minutes, that would be huge. It really does help get this podcast out to more people. So thanks so much for listening. Take care.